The Wayside Rescue Station, which is our city's low barrier shelter, has just reached its 2-month mark of operation. So we've been looking at what's going on and what we can improve in there, and we have made a few changes to the rules in the low barrier shelter in order to make it a safer environment and a cleaner environment for those who are in the shelter. Louisville had never really had a low barrier shelter before, and when the homeless encampment problems became so huge, the city started asking for proposals to open a low barrier shelter. One of the things we did is we looked at our parent organizations, the Association of Gospel Rescue Missions, to see who was running a low barrier shelter across the country and to learn from them and not have to start from scratch. So we did that, and we also looked at the National Coalition for the Homeless and gleaned information from their websites on opening a low barrier shelter. We learned a lot of information from them, how to run it. The main thing we learned is that low barrier does not mean no barrier. There has to be some rules when you have this many people under roof in order to keep everyone safe and orderly. And so we have looked at all of those things, and we put a proposal together and opened a low barrier shelter to the best of our abilities. We knew when we took on this endeavor that it would be a very difficult thing to do. It's a very difficult population that we're working with. The folks who are living on the streets and in camps are generally known to have a lot of deep issues such as mental illness, such as drug abuse, substance abuse, and we knew it would be a very volatile population if they did come into the shelter. So before we opened, we talked to other partners in the community and received assurances that we would have some police support in the form of random walkthroughs of the shelter and maybe even parking a patrol car out front as a presence, just so that we could detour any possible trouble. We also understood when the city allocated the money that they had that there were going to be some resources to help as well. We have modified somewhat in light of all of these circumstances in hopes that we can make it a cleaner environment and a much safer environment for those who are staying there as well as for our staff. Basically, when we opened the low barrier shelter, we wanted to address 4 of the barriers from folks coming into shelter. First, we wanted to address couples that could not come into any shelter together. We have allowed couples to come in, and we are still allowing couples to come in. Folks with their pets to come in. So we do have kennels for their pets. We have been pretty lenient with folks to this point in that some of the folks want to keep the pets with them in their beds at night, and we have tried that. However, what we have found is that when the owners go to sleep, the pets start wandering through the shelter and jumping up on other people's sleeping areas and so forth, and it has caused some issues. And so one of the rules we have changed is that folks can still come in with their pets, but at nighttime, when everyone's asleep, the pets must be confined in their kennels so that they're not jumping up on other folks. Another issue that we had was folks could come in if they were intoxicated or high, as long as they could behave and not bring those drugs and alcohol into the shelter or on our premises. So we have allowed this. We have found that a lot of folks are coming in with bringing drugs with them, selling drugs inside, and so that we cannot tolerate. And then finally, folks who had been barred from any shelter in town, we agreed to allow them to come into the shelter and to have a second chance. And we have done that. And what we have found is that there are physical fights in the shelter, including instances where our own security guards and staff people are being attacked in the shelter on an average about 3 times a week. And so many of the folks who are doing those attacks are folks who had previously been barred from Wayside for violence. So now folks that are barred from shelters can still come in, but if they have been barred from our shelter previously for violence reasons, They will have to meet with the Wayside Rescue Station manager first and interview to make sure that they are in a mindset now where they can come in and obey the rules and not cause a disturbance. Those are the main rule changes that we have. We also have been taking families into the low barrier shelter. There is no one else currently doing low barrier shelter for families. And what we have found, it's very difficult to move these particular families into family shelters, mainly because the parents are continuing to use drugs and are staying high. And what that has resulted in with the children, in many cases, these children are being allowed to roam through the shelter on a daily basis, and the parents are not keeping them with them and keeping an eye on them. These are small children. The shelter is full with over 100 people every night, and we don't know where these people come from. We don't know their backgrounds, and it's very unsafe, in our opinion, for these small children to be roaming around, visiting with all of these men and folks that we do not know. And so now we are asking these parents, if they are in the shelter and they have non-school age children that are going to be in the shelter, then during the daytime, if St. Stephen Baptist has their day shelter for families open, we are transporting the families to that day shelter for care during the day. We think this will keep those children much safer than in the environment they are in the low barrier shelter. One of the issues that we heard in the community was that we were no longer having a low barrier shelter. We have tweaked the rules, and when we tweak the rules, we have made a decision that the folks in the shelter can no longer stay in their bed 24/7, which is what was happening. So as the community has long seen these folks in encampments staying on the sidewalks 24/7, staying in their camps 24/7, that is what was happening in the low barrier shelter. They were staying in their beds 24/7. There's no way that we can keep the shelter clean that way because we can't get the sheets to wash them. We can't disinfect the mattresses. We can't clean the floor. We can't keep it a safe, clean environment. And so one of the rules that we tweaked yesterday was that folks must vacate the dormitory part of the low barrier shelter in the morning so that we can do all of these things. We can wash the bed linens, we can disinfect the mattresses, we can clean the floors and make sure that it's a safe environment. We are not closing the shelter in any way, shape, or form. The folks merely have to go to the community room area of the low barrier shelter, which is the other side of the gymnasium. They don't even have to go outside. It's just the other end of the gymnasium. And in that area, we've made it very comfortable with tables and chairs, televisions, activities to occupy them, refreshment station. In no way are we shutting that shelter. It is still a 24/7. The only thing we are doing is closing down the bed part so that we can clean that area and make sure that it's a clean environment. And we think one other result of doing this will be not only a safer but a quieter place at night, because what we have found is the folks that are sleeping all day long in many instances are the ones that are causing the disturbances during the night when everyone else is trying to sleep. So if we can get everyone on the same sleep schedule, I think it will help a long way in getting our cleanliness back where it should be and in getting our safety where it should be. Wayside Christian Mission has always put the safety of our clients first and foremost in everything that we do throughout the 61 years that we've been in operation. This is another way that we are trying to improve safety. The low barrier shelter to begin with was to give folks a safe place off the street where they could be, where they wouldn't be forced to move and where they wouldn't be vulnerable to folks. The elements, number one, the other things that could befall them on the streets, it's always been about safety. And so this is part of our way to continue that mission, to improve it, to make the very best life that we can for the homeless whom we serve in this community.